Guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope all is going good. Now, today we have an interesting video of a UK politician named Raja Miah, and he's been exposing a lot from the grassroots level coalition between this Labour Council representatives and these grooming gangs all the way to the highest point of politics in the UK, which is UK Parliament. And he's been receiving a lot of death threats. Yes, they've been coming to him, whether it's the Islamists, that are living in his area, or if it's law enforcement. They've been coming to him, they've been arresting him, they've been hounding him because of what he's been exposing and what he's made known to the public. So I'm going to get straight into the video now. Don't want the introduction to be too long. Raja, Miah, is a very, very well-spoken, and he puts the pieces together. And we're going to watch, a bit of this long interview. I'm going to clip the whole interview in the description down below. Let's get straight to the video.
What I've been reading about what you've done and hearing you is actually piecing together this extraordinary network that have basically allowed this to go on. I mean, it's quite complicated, isn't it? But when did you first have any inkling that something was terribly wrong?
When I got arrested. When the first time I got arrested, and I knew it had been completely fabricated, and I'm like thinking, wow, so this is how far this has got. Yeah. This isn't just a series of mistakes. This isn't just an individual here in one place covering something up. This is systemic, and the way in which the police operates in Greater Manchester is there's a Greater Manchester mayor. His name's Andy Burnham. He has delegated powers to someone else, but he's responsible for the police. Is the police and crime commissioner is his official responsibility, and then the Labour Party controlled police force is hammering down my door, a dawn raid, 8 of them dragging me out my house, and it was purely political. It was because I'm not a criminal, and something like that had never happened to me. I was in my late 40s at that time, and they're dragging me out of my house. My neighbour's looking perplexed at what's going on here in a dawn raid, and I'm like thinking, no, this has now got dangerous. This is no longer anything to do with one isolated case or something that's gone wrong in one small instance. This is systemic.
Yeah. Have you been threatened since? I mean,
regularly, as recently as this Sunday gone, the police were at my house. They continue to protect a network of. It's interesting, really, because the way in which the Labour Party operates in towns such as mine, in the ethnic minority communities, in the Bangladeshi, Pakistani, Muslim communities, whatever identity lens you want to use, they have a strange partnership with 2 types of people. One is, I call them the cartels. So these are families within those communities who have direct links with organised crime. They're not even hiding it, direct links with organised crime. And then there is this growing number of Islamists, and both those factions have come after me, and consistently come after me, not because I've criticised either of them, but because I've questioned and brought to public attention the way in which politics works in a town such as mine, and why effectively the country, it's not just my town, the country is being held to ransom by a small demographic of people. And I think if I look at it now and I look back, they're in a right mess, Peter. The Labour Party are in a right mess because they're being blackmailed, effectively being blackmailed by a group of people who control somewhere between 80 and 100, constituencies.
Yeah. But also, isn't it? I mean, just to go on quite quickly. Obviously, now we have what you might call sectarian Muslim MPs.
I call them Islamists. I'm clear what they are. They're Islamists.
And then 5 if you include Corbyn. But the point, therefore, is that haven't the Labour Party, therefore, miscalculated rather badly? I mean, they're not needed anymore by the Muslims.
And this is what I think Keir Starmer did immediately after the Southport troubles. He came out and immediately talked about the need to protect the Muslim community. If you follow it through, one of the first things he did was talk about the need to protect the Muslim community. What they are trying to do when I mean they, the Labour Party, they're trying to reassert their influence over the Muslim communities by saying, if we don't take care of you, these racist white folk are going to come and get you.
Yes, yes.
So that's the game being played by the Labour Party to counter the Islamists, is to say, okay, you can elect Islamist MPs if you want, but they haven't got the power to take care of it. We've got the Prime Minister on side, we've got senior government ministers on side, and we will take care of it. So they're trying to outflank the Islamists, and they're using the legitimate concerns, grievances in the wider community as thinking, okay, that's just as they turned the other way to white working class girls being abused, now they're using that same approach on a wider demographic of working class communities. And if you step back and look at it, you can see the game being played out.
Yes. Can you just, to go back in time a bit now, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself, actually, Raj? I mean, you're of Bangladeshi heritage, you know, and you're still a Muslim, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I would have thought that, therefore, as a Muslim, there would be a particular anger, you know, put towards you from the wider community. Is that right?
From the wider white community? No,
from the wider
my
Muslim.
own. Yeah, absolutely, all the time. And what I say to these people from my own community, I mean, I was raised in that community, so some relationships outweigh any anger that they might have, because they can't disown me in the same way as perhaps some of them would want to, because, you know, I grew up with them. I looked after their mothers when they were ill. I went to people's funerals, weddings, all that sort of stuff. So I'm embedded in the community I come from. So it's very difficult for them to ostracize me. They've tried, and the Islamists have tried. They described me as a gay Christian convert repeatedly, complete fabrication, with a view, and put my address online with a view of trying to have me killed. Effectively, is what they want to do. But the way the story I tell the people in my sort of ethnic community, my religious community, I look at them and say, we need to be part of the solution. Because if we are not part of the solution, where does that leave us? And where will it take us? What do we want? Because no one I speak to would in any way support the systematic sexual abuse of 100,000 children or more, because the government won't tell us the numbers.
We probably will never know.
Yeah. And agreed. And I said to them, well, be part of the solution. Stop being played. Oh, what about the white grooming gangs? I said, what about the white grooming gangs? The white grooming gangs are prosecuted when we come across them. Here, they're consistently hidden and covered up. This is political. And these are racially motivated crimes. Well, you can't say that. Well, they are. You speak to the victims. They're very clear as to what these men said to them while they abused them. Yes. You look at the court transcripts, the ones that are available, and it's very clear how the perpetrators legitimise what they did.
Oh, it's entirely clear. I mean, they make no bones about it. They were targeting them because they were white working class girls, and they considered themselves human. And the degradation, I think people still don't quite get it. I interrupted you there, but just give us an idea of how you grew up, where you grew up.
Absolutely, I'm the product of a second marriage, and maybe this is why I find myself in being able to champion what I champion and talk this way. My father arrived in 1944, 1945. He was sent off to serve in the Second World War. So he walked from a village in Sylhet all the way to Calcutta, enlisted in the Navy, served in the Navy, and the boat landed in Liverpool and kicked him off and told him to make his own way home. So it wasn't as easy back then. He married someone local. I have half sisters who are half English. You're ethnically English, and then him and his wife separated. He looked after all the daughters, so all the daughters stayed with him. And once the last of them was old enough to leave, then he went and met my mother and married her, and she came here, and I was born here. I was born in Bradford in 1973. They moved to Oldham. My first memories are of a very traditional working class estate, a neighbourhood community, cobbled streets, elderly white women who had raised me just as much as the two Polish guys, and
Yeah.
you know, and that was it. There was, of course, there was racism there, but it wasn't in this way, because what I saw and witnessed as a child, and it framed my entire outlook on life, is that we are stronger when we work together. And I was raised by a very mixed community. My entire childhood and upbringing was in such a mixed environment, and I look back and I'm horrified at how increasingly segregated our country has become, how increasingly sectarian it has become.
Yes, yeah. I mean, when you mention that 1970s, and I suppose into the 80s, quite mixed. That's gone, right?
Yeah, and it's a shame, because you'd figure it out.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their prejudices. Everyone starts in a certain place, but by having positive interactions with each other and living next door to each other, you figure things out, and that's gone, people. It's gone, and I'd argue it's been a strategy that's took it away from us.
Yeah. But politically speaking, if you can call what you're doing now political, I mean, how long have you been involved politically in things in general?
Well, in terms of this sort of stuff, 6 years, I'd say.
Before that.
But before that, I mean, I spent the best part of 15 years specialising in what you'd call counter-extremism work. I sat in government task forces when David Blunkett was Home Secretary, so you can go back to
David Blunkett.
When David Blunkett was Home Secretary. I sat on a government task force as far back as that, on what was then community cohesion. I wrote raising concerns in 1997 on the rise of what we now accept as Islamist extremism, and the consequences of our failed multicultural strategy, and that goes back to 1997. So, best part of 30 years, I'd say.
Were you perceived, therefore, as a troublemaker? I mean, in some ways, because you were questioning these things. Was that how you were perceived?
The Tony Blair's Labour government took me in as part of the solution and trying to help them frame what the solution was.
Yes.
But at a local level, yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Because there was an arrangement in place.
Yeah.
In every town and city at a local level, there was an arrangement in place between what was, and I keep saying the Labour Party because that's what the dominant party is in these multicultural sort of communities.
Yeah.
And there was an arrangement in place where the local white politicians would take care of the Asian politicians, usually at the expense of the white working class. And over a period of time, the Asian politicians, the Pakistani and Bangladeshi politicians, the communities decided they could represent themselves.
Yeah.
And you've seen that transition take place where those white politicians have been replaced by Pakistani and Bangladeshi Muslim politicians who are more than happy just to represent and champion for their own community needs. And you're seeing now move on to the next level where they're not satisfied with just being in charge of council seats. They want the MP seats, and you've seen the 4 sectarian Islamist MPs. No, why do we need the Labour Party when we can represent ourselves?
Exactly. Could you give us an idea, Raja, of how these kind of networkings work when it comes to the road gangs? I mean, because we've got the police, we've got social services under the council, local politicians. The way it's portrayed in the media, and of course, there is obviously a lot in this, is that they sort of wholesale just simply ignored it. But it's not just simply ignoring it because it's politically kind of ideologically inconvenient, is it? It's about votes too, isn't it?
And that's what I've always maintained. And I'm so, if there is a win in the journey we've been on, and the latest interest in this subject, is people now are accepting the position that I've been shouting about. This isn't about maintaining community relations. This isn't even about ignoring the needs of working class white males and thinking, they've made lifestyle choices and all the horrible things that they used to describe. This was a calculated exchange. And that calculated exchange was looking the other way. And in return for looking the other way, those who control the votes in that community continue to provide the votes in that community to the Labour Party. 100%.
How did it work then on a practical
on a practical level? Okay, so there was a guy in Rochdale, the most famous, infamous of the grooming gang leaders was a man called Shabir Ahmed. He was known as Daddy. He's due out of prison, I think, next year, but he served 22 years in prison. At a local level, Daddy was employed by the council. He was employed by the council and seconded to the Pakistani Community Centre. Of course, the Pakistani Community Centre then made sure that the votes went en masse to whoever the Labour candidate was. And
was this done through postal vote?
Postal vote. So Tony Blair had introduced postal voting for anyone, yeah? And very quickly people worked out that all you needed was a signed postal vote, the X left empty, and you'd harvest them, you'd collect them. So you'd collect them via the community centres, you'd collect them via the mosque, you'd collect them via the informal networks that these men operated through. Of course, organised crime moved in, the same sort of network of heroin dealers moved into this area. They know what they've got their own way of doing this, and they can also knock on your door and remind you that you're not registered to postal vote, and would you like to register to postal vote? What are you going to do when someone like that knocks on your door? You're going to sign the form and hand it over, because it's not worth the hassle. So the likes of Shabir Ahmed were also prominent members of the Labour Party. They kept it hidden. We exposed it. In fact, it was a Labour Party, a senior Labour Party politician who contacted me to tell me, Raja, did you know Shabir Ahmed was one of ours? Regularly out of Michael Meach's office, who was the Labour Party MP, and also a man called Phil Willis, who was removed, I think, from being an MP. He actually got in trouble under the Misrepresentation of People's Act for some of his election leaflets that he produced. So these guys were the kingpin they're supplying the politicians with the votes, coordinating that. The MPs, of course, can say, oh, we didn't know about this, which, the deniability is, of course, there. But the system underneath was heavily dependent on postal votes. And in return, these men wielded power, which is why Shabir Ahmed, 9 times, we forced out of Andy Burnham's investigators that they let him go 9 times. Yeah. And the reason they let him go wasn't they missed it. The reason they let him go was because he was protected. And the only reason a man like that could have been protected was because of the political system in which he operated in and the power he held within that.
But how far up do you think people you were talking about local politics? Or actually, no, you've mentioned people.
No, this is national, and what we talk about in terms of how the postal votes are harvested, and the exchange of that. My phone is full of emails from people from Birmingham all the way to Blackburn. In every community where there is a demographic like mine, with the political space, such as what I make reference to, the electoral fraud to take place using harvested postal votes, and I guarantee if you scratch the surface, in most of those places you'll find the grooming gangs operating the same way. Now you can say they're parallel and have nothing to do with each other, and I will say to you, bring on the national inquiry, and you will see exactly what's gone on, and you will see how vital it is that whichever government comes in next to fight, and fights against the Labour administration, they've got to take steps to safeguard our democracy, and they've got to announce reforms in postal voting.
Raja Miah is national treasure, honestly. A very brave and well articulated man, giving us answers for the questions that we've been stirring up in our heads for these past couple of months. And he's been saying how, no, this backdates decades. This isn't even about now. This is about when Tony Blair was back in and he brought in postal voting. And, a lot of gangsters were going around, Islamic gangsters were going around and they were threatening people saying, yeah, you need to vote like this if you don't want problems, So, yeah, he went in depth. I'm going to leave the full link in the description down below. And just last thing, he is a Muslim man, and he's keeping it real. So no, he is not some Islamophobia guy. He's not some gay Christian, as they said. No, he's a Muslim man from the Muslim community, keeping it real and saying that this is not on. So he has nothing to do with Christianity, because you know how they try and change it They like to change it. Now he was a Christian man. He's being paid by Christians, or somehow he's an undercover agent. None of that. You know, he's Muslim, and he's, you know, just, you know, he's just keeping it real, you know. But the Muslim community never take accountability, so they're gonna blame, of course. But anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.